Welcome to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, ChiroThin, Chiro Moguls, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiropractic Rocks, Winner's Edge, Chiro Tax Pro, and Digital Hustle. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 201 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your co-host, Luke Millette. Here's your host, Jim Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Fabrizio Mancini, and if you want to know more about thriving and not just surviving, stay tuned. All right, so today, episode 201 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. It's such an honor to have a good friend of ours, Fabrizio Mancini. And you're coming in from Texas, and we are coming in from the mile-high state of Colorado. And we just want to welcome you with open arms to this episode.
Well, thank you so much. And first of all, I want to say congratulations from the amazing work that you're doing for the profession and bringing all this great insight and information that is helping all of us out there in the trenches. And also that I'm honored to be back again and maybe sharing some new insights.
Yeah, this is round two. And, this is first time you're episode 52. Now you're 201. And I know that a lot of things have happened since that interview. And we're dealing now with this whole COVID era. So maybe you could share with some of our audience what's been happening since our past interview.
Well, I'll share a little bit about me because I can tell you that this pandemic is unprecedented, and it has actually impacted everyone we know. Not only every chiropractor in the world, not just the US, but in the world. Not only everybody that, no matter how old you are, what gender you are, what religion you are, you've been impacted by this as a chiropractor. So for me, I've always impacted too. The benefits for me is that when I retired from Parker in 2012, I remember I took a year off and I had a friend of mine, Mark Victor Hansen, that shared something with me that was very enlightening. He said, Fab, I've lost and gained millions of dollars. But what changed the world for me financially is when I learned that I needed to have 3 sources of income that were independent of each other. He said, ever since then, I have never lost millions again. And I've been able to withstand any changes that life throws at me. Well, this change was really radical for everyone. And for me, it impacted, out of my 4 companies, 2 of them pretty bad. And the other 2, I was able to pivot and increase it to make up for some of the deficiencies on the other 2. And what I decided to do is, because I also mentor 25 of the biggest practices in the world, I had to be there for my mentees, the people that depend on me to help them through crises like this. And the challenge is, like everybody knows, no one had been through this before. There was no models out there. So what I did with my companies is that I started focusing on the ones that I had the ability to earn and increase, and then be able to manage the other ones that were hit pretty severely with the income component of it. And what I started doing in order to figure out what to do is that I started interviewing so many people that were sharing with me what they were doing. So I started picking up the phone, just like we're doing now, and calling people and saying, hey, listen, what are you doing? What are you doing to pivot with this? How are you framing the conversation with your patients? What are you doing in your community so people can see you as an essential doctor? What are you doing in order to make sure that you are providing services, even though the governor just told you you had to shut down your practice? What are you doing to add services that people are demanding in order to increase your income during this time? What are you doing in order to attract more new patients during a time like this when people are afraid that they're going to maybe be contagious if they go visit a chiropractic practice? And I'm telling you guys, the thing that I've learned is it was so overwhelming, all the information that I took within a period of 5 months that I was doing all these interviews. And I came up with a very simple 3-step process that if you follow, you should be able to thrive during this difficult time. And the first thing that I've learned is that the successful practices were doing one thing. They were assessing their situation with honest eyes, with authenticity. Listen, I'm one of the biggest optimists in the world. And I was telling everybody, everything's going to be over within 2 weeks. Don't worry, you're going to be back to normal. And that's the way most people were reacting. But the reality, nobody knew. And none of us were really preparing for the worst, right? None of us thought that after 6 months, we'd still be dealing with this. Everybody thought it was going to be a very short-term situation. Well, the successful people, the thriving practices were doing something very different. They were assessing where they are in 3 areas. They were taking a look at their money situation. How much money did they have? How much was their bandwidth, regardless of what was happening as far as people coming in and not coming in? What was their expenses actually during that time? And not just thinking that they were going to be able to float everybody out there, even though the PPP money was only giving us 2 months of leeway. Many chiropractors, as you know, did not even apply for the PPP, which I don't even understand, but they did not benefit from that. Many of them, what did they do? They reacted. They let go of their staff. They shut down their practices. Immediately, they said, we're only going to open 2 days a week, 3 days a week. We're only going to shorten our hours to 2 or 3 hours a day instead of 5 or 6 or 7. Well, that's not what the thriving people did. The thriving people took an inventory about their money, what was coming in. They recognized that they were essential doctors since the beginning. Like in Texas, our governor for 2 weeks did not allow us to be essential. So we had to shut down. In many parts of the country, as you know, New York, New Jersey, California, they got hit pretty hard. So those hot spots were actually more demanding of shutting down. But the thriving doctors, what did they do? They started recognizing that they were essential doctors. They started communicating to people, to their patient base. They started making big announcements, big banners outside of their practices. We are essential chiropractic practice. We are open. Whatever you have to do to let your community know that you're there for them more than ever. You know, those are the things that I found out. They were actually not making expenses that were not necessary during that time. They were managing their money properly. The second thing that they did is that they started managing their time better. You see, a lot of the chiropractors were wasting time. Some of them just went home and started watching all the reruns of Netflix. What is that going to do for your practice and for serving people through chiropractic care? Well, the thriving people, you know what they did? They started rewriting their goals every day, adapting to the new situation. They started making sure that their agenda calendar was full of service. They started coming up with taking that time to either learn new skill sets, learn something else, create new services for the practices instead of wasting the time talking about how bad things were. So you have to assess your time. How are you spending your time? And the last thing they did is they started assessing how big of an impact was this having, where they actually, their practice would drop 40%, 50%. They were actually keeping tabs on the numbers on a weekly basis. They were not just taking it for granted. Oh, if you ask somebody, well, has this impacted your practice? Most chiropractors that I talked to did not even know what percentage of patients stopped coming. Most of them didn't even know why they stopped coming. They weren't even calling them back and saying, hey, we're open. What do you mean you're not coming? In fact, you should bring your whole family because this is the time you need to invest in your health. Chiropractic is about a healthy lifestyle. It's about healthy living. It's about supporting your body to be healthier. They weren't doing that. They were not having bigger goals about saying, what am I going to do? Can I use a Facebook campaign, ad campaign to boost some posts, to try to let people know the importance of chiropractic care, share some of the scientific evidence that we have, share some testimonial stories about how people are getting better through chiropractic care during this difficult time. They weren't doing that. They weren't really thinking about growing. They were thinking about shrinking. They were actually surviving mindset. And that's not where you thrive. Where you thrive is you look at the opportunity and then you take it all the way in. So those 3 things really made a big difference in how people thrive during this time. And they started really driving their traffic and their patient database and growing their communities with chiropractic care.
Well, that's a very interesting snapshot from what you've been doing over the past 5 months, surveying the chiropractic profession and finding out the analysis of what chiropractors are doing that are doing well right now. What are some of your solutions or maybe some takeaways that people could focus on for the next 90 days to use your systems and strategies to turn their clinic to, if it's striving to even do better, or maybe they're that 30% that felt like they needed to retract or shut down? What maybe is some words of advice or encouragement that might be able to turn them around and help them start being more successful?
Well, the good news really is the fact that in chiropractic, as you know, we have some of the most creative people, that are going to pivot for the positive. So let me give you some good news and some suggestions. The good news is that we have figured out what works. We have had some of the biggest growth in chiropractic history over the last 3 months in some of these practices. So what do they do differently? One of the suggestions is survey your patient database. Get a Survey Monkey, survey your patient database, your postings, do it on Facebook, whatever, and ask 3 different questions. The first one, what is your greatest health need during the pandemic? The second one, what is the biggest stress level that you have currently going on because of the pandemic? And the last one, what is your biggest lifestyle change that has occurred because of the pandemic? You see, you ask your patients what it is that they're needing, and then you reframe the value of chiropractic care, chiropractic lifestyle, all of the things that we promote into their needs. And that is a game changer. But if you try to go to your patient database without listening to them first, with your suggestions of what chiropractic is and what it can do and what all of these positive things, they're not going to be receptive. First of all, because they are not even thinking about you right now. They're not even thinking about us. They're not even wanting to say, I got to get a chiropractic adjustment. Maybe some of our patients are, but the majority of went into survival mode. How am I going to pay the bills? I just lost my job. My God, I'm fighting with my wife and my husband every day. I can't stand being here 24/7 for the last 3 months. My kids are home. I can't even take them to the daycare. We're all cramped up into this apartment or this house. We all know. So that's the first one. The second one, and this is a big one, you have to automate your practice as much services or procedures, right? We taught procedures for many years at Parker Seminar. Try to automate your procedures as much as possible with technology in order not to depend so much on your physical CAs. And the reason for that is because some of the chiropractic practices have lost some of their long-term CAs because they couldn't afford them anymore, or because the CAs all of a sudden felt like it was too much exposure working in a chiropractic practice, so they lost them. Other ones had to let go of their CAs because they couldn't afford it. So automate your services as much as possible and create virtual services. I'll give you an example. One of my dear friends, Dr. Aaron Gum owns Blueprint. They just got Inc. Number 227, Inc. 500. The first time that a chiropractor that I know of in 30 years that made the Inc. 500 firm. And you know what he did? He virtualized 12 services that chiropractor can offer whenever they're shut down. And he had created that over the last 10 years, but he hasn't turned it on because we are so much into bricks and mortars. We want to touch the people. We want them in our office. But whenever our office is closed, what do? You have to have services that are virtual, that even if the patients aren't coming in, you can still provide a level of service. Let me give you one example of what one of my mentees did. So he called me and he said, Fab, we're shut down in New Jersey. And I said, okay, you have all this database. What do you think they need? So he did the Survey Monkey. The number one thing that they wanted was, how do I build my immune system from home? So he put together a little immune kit. We have that kit right now. And we started selling it. He sold thousands of them in the first 2 weeks, thousands. And he priced them quite handsomely too, that more than what he did. And people would pay whatever because in their mind, they wanted to build their immune system. But then he took that track and then reactivated them into the chiropractic care. So whenever they receive their immune system, he called them, or an assistant called them and say, hey, listen, Mrs. Jones, did you receive your packet? Do you have any questions? Let me share with you what is the best optimum results that we're getting if you take it this way. And by the way, do you realize that your chiropractic adjustment is very important, because that immune system also depends on nerve supply. And when we adjust your body, we know that we're going to improve your nerve function, including your immune system. So this is not going to be a cure-all, but don't you want to be the strongest that you can during this time? Because your chances of being exposed to this virus are very high. Would you agree? Okay, so could we schedule you and your family as soon as possible? And they reactivated, and that's how they were able to thrive during this time. The third thing that I would say is have services. Like another one of mine, they use a company called Multi-Radiance. And what Multi-Radiance did, they've been a big laser company in chiropractic for many years, over 10 years. But they created a laser that is rental. So for those chiropractic patients that could not come in, they created a rental unit where the chiropractors can still make money while the patients were paying cash for those services up front. And they will buy, let's say, 2-week rental or 4-week rental. And then they will guide them as to how to use them at home. And they got the FDA clearance to have those rental units. And to me, I thought that was brilliant, because all of a sudden you had another services that chiropractors use quite often, like laser, and you were able to now promote that to your patients, even though they were not maybe coming in as often, or maybe they were not coming in at all. So just get creative with any services that you can provide to be able to move forward. But the most important thing is you gotta own your message. You can't let people in your community, in your database of patients, be swayed by the media that all they're talking about is social distancing, staying home, washing your hand, which are things that are important. But as you know, as chiropractors, we got to invest in our bodies. We got to watch what we eat. We got to exercise. We got to get adjusted on a regular basis. We got to get the proper nutrition. Those are the things that we teach. So take ownership of your message and let them know. And this is what I'm telling everyone. We're more essential today than ever. And if we play our cards right, during this pandemic, we can actually become the most essential provider in America in the healthcare system, because we're engaging the patient to take active care instead of waiting into a visit, which are now delayed 3 to 6 months in the healthcare system to be able to see a doctor now, no matter what specialty. So those patients are not going anywhere. They're going to come to you if you let them know that you're the right provider for them. And if you frame the conversation based on their needs, and if you let them know that we are here to support them the way we've supported people for 125 years in the same way, this is the time to get your chiropractic adjustment and to invest in your health lifestyle choices more than ever. And that's what chiropractors do on a daily basis.
And so this is going to be a PDF that you'll share with us. And so we can put it on the website with this episode when it comes out. But where else can people go if they want to learn more about your program, Thriving in the New Normal?
Well, what I would do is, listen, I'm about giving right now. I've been very blessed, thank God. I'm about giving. So I usually charge $500 for an assessment that I already put together online, that within 20 minutes, it gives you a clear picture as to where you are in those 3 main areas and what do you need to do to thrive during this time. And I usually charge $500, and I'm going to gift it to you. If they just go to fablifeacademy.com, fablifeacademy.com, they will have access to that. And it goes more. I'm also going to give you resources that my mentees pay for. You're going to have access to it. It's going to help you not only build your practice, but keep you positive. I interview some of the most influential people in the world, and I have all those recorded interviews for you to benefit from as to what you can do. But then the first 5 people that fill out an assessment, I'm going to take 30 minutes of my time, only the first 5 people, and I'm going to actually do what I do with my mentees. I'm going to coach you. I'm going to answer any of your questions as to how you can begin to thrive during this time in the next 30 days. So you give me whatever your challenge is, and I'm going to give you a plan of action that is designed for you on a 30-minute Zoom call, just like this. that people can benefit from for the first 5 people that fill out the assessment when they go to fablifeacademy.com. So that's the best way that I can help right now, putting all those resources online, which it took me 6 months to put 30 years of resources online so people can have access to it. Now they can have access as a gift from you.
And that's a great deal. I'm sure slots will fill up very quickly. And so, you're giving away all this great information, but what did it take for you to get the information to teach it? Like, what are some things that you've learned in the last 6 to 7 months that inspired you to put this stuff out?
Well, since I retired from Parker, I've been blessed because a big portion of my money comes from lectures. I do about 70 lectures around the world a year. I just wrote my 5th book right before this time, which is a 7-figure book that I'm selling in New York right now. I have a TV show that I'm selling in LA as a host of my own TV show. So what it took was this. The fact that I've been a practitioner for 10 years, president of a university in chiropractic for 13 and a half years, and also a media expert for the last 9 years, where I get to impact about 5 million people on radio and television every week through Fox, Dr. Phil, The Doctors, and all the shows that I do. I want you to know that when I'm giving you suggestions, it's coming not only from the perspective of what it takes from a chiropractic practitioner component to succeed, but also what is the patients, the community out there looking for. The biggest benefit that I can give you is to give you the mindset of the public. And this is it, very simple. They're afraid. They're afraid of an invisible enemy that may kill them and their loved ones. Now, you and I know that this virus doesn't operate like any other virus that we've seen in history. You and I know that a virus should never be to this degree of a fear. We also know that according to the CDC, only 6% of all the deaths in the United States have been attributed only to the virus, right? All the other components were diseases that were going to die anyways. So we know that the numbers have been inflated. We also know that there's an election year in which all you're seeing is a political play. If the Republicans say one thing, the other ones say the opposite, and it's back and forth, and they own the media. The news, for the first time in history that I lived in this country for over 30 years, I have never seen bias in news like I've seen this time, where they're promoting only certain things and not the true balance of things. So the thing that we want you to understand is this. Circumstances never define you as a chiropractor. You define yourself based on the way you respond. This is not a time to become a victim. Get your victim mentality out of the way. This is the time for you to step up and be the best doctor you can be. Be the most essential provider in that community. Get hungry, like Les Brown says. Get hungry for serving more people today than ever. Make sure that you communicate with your patients and let them know how important it is to get adjusted, how important it is to bring family and friends, how important it is to refer their co-workers that are at home, all afraid, because they are afraid.
You made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, ChiroThin, Chiro Moguls, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiropractic Rocks, Winner's Edge, Chiro Tax Pro, and Digital Hustle. Let's hustle.
They are afraid. The other statistic that I will give you, in 30 years, I've been interviewing people and ask them one question. What are the 3 things that you value the most in your life? What are the 3 most important things in your life? Less than 10% have ever put health as one of those 3 things. Less than 10%. Now, for the last 6 months, over 80% results. They have put health as a priority. So this is the time for chiropractic to rise. Why? Because the public has us as a priority for the first time, as a top 3 priority. Number 2, we are holistic doctors. We are empowering them rather than disempowering them to believe that a vaccine is going to be the all cure. We already know that that's not the case. If you look at the experts in that world, they'll tell you a vaccine is never going to be an all-time cure. But the way that they're promoting it, The way that they're saying now, you got to take 2 and 3 shots in order to be able to get the most benefit out of this vaccine. We already know that's not going to work. We have too much history with vaccines to know that, right? So what we need to do right now is educate our community, our public, into what the facts are. And the facts are is your body has already the immune system ready to attack any virus or bacteria. You just have to take care of it. You got to adjust it on a regular basis. You got to give it the right food. You got to do the right things to support your body. You got to manage your stress in a healthy way rather than get the stress, get the best out of you. So that's really the message. The message is take ownership and then become that essential doctor that you were prepared to be. Right now, you're sitting with all the preparations. The only thing missing is, are you taking advantage of it? Are you stepping up and saying, I'm going to do this? I'm going to have my biggest month next month, right? Or are you preparing for failure? Are you going to already prepare and say, you know what? Probably my practice is going to be another 30% down, 20% down. And God forbid we close again, right? Because there's a second wave that people keep talking about. What am I going to do then if I'm not preparing for this? That's why the virtual component is so essential. That's why the automation component. That's why having the things like the rentals. Just get creative. You know, it's so funny. My fourth company, I got into a nutritional company, and I have a pack for losing weight, right? Listen to this creativity. The average American has gained over 15 pounds since the COVID-19 started, right? Some, on average. So what I did is I put together I partnered with one of the top nutritional formulators in the country, and we put together these packs. Weight management while increasing your emotional depressions, right? So it's got ingredients that help boost your emotional state in all of our clinical studies. But also, I'm introducing intermittent fasting as one of the ways to combine it with, because the New England Journal of Medical just released a study in January this year that intermittent fasting is the healthiest way to lose weight, but also all the added value. Then I created an immune pack, 2 products, an immune pack that supports your body so greatly that it supports you against any virus or bacteria. And then the third one is a stress management hormonal pack, because the stress levels are so high right now. We put a pack together for people to manage their stress better through nutrition. So people are not buying one pack, they're buying all 3. And that company in the last 3 months grew 600% just because people love this. Over 80% of the people reorder the next month, over 80%. So that's when I said to myself, okay, maybe I'm not making money through giving adjustments, but I'm making money through giving people the proper nutrition for them to support the biggest challenges that they're facing right now. And that's just nutrition. You got to get creative, but just don't keep doing the same thing again and again, because this COVID-19, we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. We don't know what next month is going to look like. Everybody says, after the election, we don't know what's going to happen after the election. All we know is we got to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And the way you do that is by some of the suggestions I've given you, because it's already working for the doctors that are doing it.
Well, let me ask you this. I know that you've offered a lot of insight to our audience today. And one of the things I'm really curious about is, I'm sure everybody's out there says, hey, Fab Mancini, you've been able to network with high-end networks. You've been able to get on to the doctors and Dr. Oz, and you've been able to do Dr. Phil. What if there's other chiropractors that have not been college presidents and haven't been as in the light that you're in? What suggestions would you give to them to start leveraging opportunities to get in local media and to get onto local radio stations and to maybe get onto Chiro Hustle podcast? What advice do you have to them to be able to start stepping into their right voice and into the light, to be able to share the power of chiropractic and the lifestyle around chiropractic, and why there's not a pill, a potion, or a lotion that's going to save people from immune compromise, but the power of the adjustment and the lifestyle associated with it will. So maybe we could, expand on some opportunities or some ideas that our audience would probably be very welcome to hear, just because so many people say, hey, go do this media thing or post social media 5 times a day, or, do a Facebook Live for 30 straight days, or, boost a post here. But you're talking about like real, like mainstream media, which is kind of what most people are turning away from right now because they're tired of it. But I know if we can take away from the idea of input asphasia, of like misinformation, how can we recycle the property of chiropractic into a group of people that are getting poor information?
This is great, a great question. And I've been teaching this, and I kind of guide the people that I mentor through this process. But let me give you a couple of scenarios that will give you tremendous value. The first one is when I do Fox News every week, I lead always through a scientific study. So if you go to the website, chiroaccess.com, chiroaccess.com is the #1 website of chiropractic research in the world. Every research that's ever been done in chiropractic is in that portal. And it's a free site. If you want the full articles, you pay, I think it's like $50 a year, but you can just get the summary. So what I do, I go to chiroaccess.com. I find any study that supports chiropractic care with reduced stress, chiropractic care with losing weight, chiropractic care with better sleep, chiropractic care with better low back pain, chiropractic care with neck pain, chiropractic care, whatever. You take that summary and you go into your, let's say I'm in Dallas, Texas, right? Which I'm in Dallas, Texas. So I look at all my networks in Dallas, Texas, and I look at their website. Now, most people don't realize that, but you go into the news website, the news part of the website. And in the news part of the website, it usually gives you the producers or the directors of that particular area. And what you do is you send them what we call a pitch. A pitch is what the news are used to hearing from publicists and other people out there. The average newsstand gets 1,200 pitches a day. 1,200 pitches a day. Guess how many they get from chiropractors? Minimum 2 per month. Per month. Because chiropractors don't know how to leverage the media. So you take this study, you put a pitch together and said something about, let's say, stress. Chiropractic care proven to reduce stress during the pandemic, right? So you make it relevant. And then what you do is you kind of talk a little bit about the study, you give them the study, and then you give 3 points of how to reduce the stress during the pandemic. One of the points should be meditation, perhaps. Another point could be, being able to confront your stresses rather than avoid them. And then the last one, you put chiropractic care, because the chiropractic is like a reset button in order to the nervous system to be able to refunction again. So whenever you get too much conduction, so the way I talk about it is the nervous system is an electrical system. So imagine the electrical system in your house. What happens to one of your outlets when you get too much energy in there? It backfires, right? It resets itself. Well, chiropractic adjustment is like pushing that reset button to allow the electrical system to be able to function again the way it was designed to be. But if you keep putting more stuff in there, you're not going to get anything out of it, right? It's already shut down. So that's kind of like a way that I would do it. And then all of a sudden, anything that you put in a pitch regarding the pandemic, COVID-19, you'd be surprised how the news producers will just have you on the show. But then I'm going to give you an extra one. Add a patient case. Add a patient case of one of your patients that benefited from chiropractic care because of this. Now you have studies. Now you have tips. Now you have a live case that is actually benefiting from that. And now they may say, hey, can we bring that patient into the studio, or can we interview them? And what a great promotion for you and your practice to be able to have a patient that actually gets in the news and be able to share how chiropractic care in your office helped them so much during the stress levels that he was having. Maybe the patient is saying the stress was causing me ulcers. Ever since I started going to chiropractic care, I don't have the ulcers anymore. The stress was keeping my cortisol levels so high that I couldn't sleep at night. I'm sleeping an average of 6 hours a night. But letting them hear from the patient. So you put a patient case there, and all of a sudden now that adds more value to the pitch. And that is a very simple formula I have used forever, and I've been teaching that forever, that will get you pretty much into any news in your town.
So what we're saying is, in a synopsis here, being positive and proactive, number one, and understanding that you have some solutions when it comes to the fear of not only the public domain, but also the practice domain. And listening to you, you sound like you have some resources for people to come and to utilize, which is a great gift that you're offering to our audience today. And the other part of this is a lot of people out there, like I said, they have input aphasia from too much negativity in the news. But what we're coming to terms with right now is that the news resource is not always bad. It just needs to have more attention from the right sources. So if we bring good source and we give good information, then that gets chiropractors in alignment to be able to share their truth. And you give a resource of how they can get good studies to follow, how they can do a good pitch to the networks, and how they can get repeat, opportunities with that network, which I think is massive. And then the thing that you've also mentioned is why the testimonial is so big in sharing like a real life study and a real life case is because third party validation wins all the time. And that's why referrals are so big to grow a chiropractic office. Word of mouth is the most important. So if the networks are available to give word of mouth to the chiropractor that can give 3 simple tips to people for how to thrive in the COVID era, but not only that, to manage stress, to be able to boost their immune system, to have a healthier functioning nervous system, and to maybe, learn what it's like to thrive in 2020 rather than to think that the world's coming to an end and that there's no solutions out there. So I think what you've shared today has been very dynamic. You've been very linear. I don't think we've left out any processes into what it means to help the practitioner, what it means to grow a practice with distance help. I think that that's something that people in chiropractic, because it's such a tactical profession that it's hands-on. How do we help people if we can't be hands-on? So I think there's also solutions to that you've offered today as well. At this point, is there anything that you think that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share?
Well, I just want to clarify one thing that you mentioned, and that is, yes, people in the news are saying that I'm not going to watch as many news because it's a little depressing, but that's about 15% of the population. The 85% is watching more news than ever. So the news ratings have skyrocketed. They are making more money. They are having more eyes watching the news, all the networks, not just Fox News, which I get to hear from my producer all the time, how much they're grown. But all the networks, the majority of the public is still stuck to the news. But when you can bring a positivity, and let's say that producer in your hometown liked your story, maybe they're starting to feel guilty that they're putting so much negative PR out there. Maybe they want to put one little story, and that's your story because it captured their eyes. Imagine how great that would be, not only for you and your practice and your community, but for the chiropractic profession, because we don't have a lot of positive stories out there about chiropractic. And that's really with the benefit of here. As a last minute thing, I would say the thing that I would just want everyone to consider is that, chiropractic has been around for 125 years. This is our 125-year birthday. We should be reaching far more than 15% of the American public. And as you know, in most countries, that percentage is less than 5%. Some countries, it's not even 1%. So 50% of the country, after 125 years, I don't think Didi Palmer and BJ Palmer would be very happy with us. We have not done a good job in serving more people. I'm telling you right now, because of this pandemic, we have another opportunity like we did in 1918 when the flu season was happening and chiropractors were essential. They were helping people when everything else was failing. We can do that again. And now we don't have to hide in churches and synagogues and temples to try to adjust our patients. We don't have to do it like a speakeasy, that you have to knock the door 3 times and say password, subluxation. Okay, come on in. We can do it legally. We are essential doctors. Let's stand up. Let's be essential doctors. Let the world know who we are and what we can do for people. Our national average is that we help over 80% of the people we accept. No healthcare profession can claim that. We can. This is our time to take ownership of our message and don't let other people define who we are. This is the time for us to truly define chiropractic like never before. And I love the word essential. We need to be essential. We need to talk about being essential to people because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for who is an essential doctor that can help me right now, and who better than you. And that's really what I wanted to share with you today.
Great message. We thank you so much for being our guest today. And the information that you shared was very valuable, very actionable, and always with passion.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys again. Go ahead.
Everyone, head over to Fab Life Academy to get some of your resources and sign up for those the first 5 slots. And the PDF will be available with this episode when we upload it. And Dr. Fab, I want to thank you again for returning to Chiro Hustle.
Thank you guys for all the work you do. And remember, fablifeacademy.com, fablifeacademy.com, and start benefiting from all those resources and take that assessment. I'm telling you, by the end of it, you'll know what you got to do, because I'll give you suggestions of what the biggest practices are doing. And you don't have to be a big practice. It could be a small practice. I just want you to think thriving. I don't want you to think surviving, because our profession cannot stand that. We need to be thriving as a profession right now. And we can only do it with you doing it every day in your community.
Well, thank you for such a great interview today. And we value your friendship and we value your message. And we look forward to getting you on for number 3.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, Fab. Have a good day, okay?
You
We'll
too.
see you next time.
All right. Bye now. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.